Hello, Internet. I am Pastor Recoil, and welcome to my parish. Today is the second Sunday after Pentecost, and we're going to talk about it. Welcome to Pastor Recoil's Parish, where I talk about some things in the Bible that you may not have heard about in church, either because it's not quite appropriate for all audiences, or it just isn't something that's easy to talk about in a sermon. Today's readings for the second Sunday after Pentecost are 1 Kings 19, 1 through 15a, Psalm 42 and 43, Galatians 3, 23 to 29, and Luke 8, 26 through 39. Today, we're going to talk about how it feels when life sucks. I know that sounds like an odd statement, especially coming from a pastor. I'm supposed to say things like, chin up, bucko, God is super powerful and stuff, and if you just pray harder or faith more or whatever better, God will take care of all your problems. But that's kind of a jerk thing to say. It isn't helpful in the moment, and it can do some real harm to people, implying that whatever they're going through is actually their own fault. In today's readings, we have three examples of people who are going through some stuff: Elijah, the psalmist, and a demon-possessed man. All three of them have some really interesting stories, and we see different ways that God does help people, but not quite in the ways that, well, we always expect. So first we have in the gospel the demon-possessed man. This man was living on the outskirts of society. Whatever it was going on with him that the people of the first century CE said was demon possession, the text isn't super clear giving us examples, but it means that the whole town forced him out into the wilderness, basically, when whatever it was that was affecting him acted up. He was pretty obviously not well, but his peers, his neighbors, didn't do anything to help him. They just ignored him and pushed him out into the graveyard and basically left him there. On the other hand, we see Jesus, who went out to where he was, met him, and then invited him back into community. This is a reminder for Jesus' followers to do the same, not just pawn off those people who aren't well on God for some miraculous healing, but to actually go to them, spend some time with them, sit with them, suffer with them. Then we have Psalms 42 and 43, which on the surface seem to have the same kind of message that I said was bad before, where the psalmist says, hope in God. But I don't think he's saying that that's what people should do when they're in their circumstance. I think the psalmist is lamenting everything going on around them, almost willing themselves to hope in God. Not saying that you should, but saying, well, that God's the only one that might be able to bail them out of this problem. So the psalmist cries out to God to fix this thing, while also spending a good deal of time complaining about whatever that thing is. It's fascinating to me that in these Psalms, rescue doesn't happen. It's saying something more like, when everything's going wrong, yell at God about it, because God can take it. The psalmist is almost shifting their focus so that they're not just sitting with their problems all by themselves. They're having a relationship with God and bringing God into their problems. And then kind of says as a reminder, hope in God because I will again give him thanks. It gives the impression that the psalmist is not hoping in God for rescue from the problem, although that probably is part of it, but is also looking for God for comfort, for hope, for security in the midst of the problem. Going right along with what Jesus did and what it seems like Jesus' followers are called to emulate regarding the demon-possessed man. And then we get Elijah. Now, I love this story because it opens with a reminder that Elijah had just done something absolutely incredible. He had a showdown with the prophets of Baal in chapter 19, the chapter before. There were some majestic insults, fire being called down from heaven, and it ended with the death of 1,000 of Baal and Asherah's prophets, these other gods that were in Israel. This was a huge victory for the God of Israel over the other gods around them, but Elijah's not feeling victorious. He should be riding a high like he's never ridden a high before, but instead, he's hiding in a desert, afraid for his life, and even asking for God to kill him. It's a pretty quick turnaround. But at the same time, I know that feeling. Maybe not the asking God to kill him part because he feels so alone, but definitely the something really cool just happened and I feel miserable about it. Sometimes when our brains decide to be the worst, they so often attack us in the midst of a successful event. And so here's Elijah feeling utterly defeated when everything should be going really well. The way that our brains can trick us into thinking that everything is terrible is truly astonishing. But here's what I love about this story. God doesn't fix Elijah. God doesn't make everything better and then Elijah just goes on his way. God takes care of Elijah. God gives him food and water. And then it, miraculously does strengthen Elijah to run for 40 days to another cave, but he gets to the cave and he's still struggling. And he tells God how isolated and alone he's feeling. And God still doesn't fix him. God doesn't take away those feelings that Elijah is having in some miraculous way. But God does address them. And he addresses them with other humans. First off, God tells Elijah that he's not alone. There's still 7,000 people in Israel who have stayed faithful. But he also points Elijah to several companions who will work with him, who will do things alongside him, including a guy named Elisha who would eventually become his successor. I think these stories all come together to give reminders of the kind of community that we're supposed to be when someone in our community is having a really hard time. They give the person who's struggling permission to exist with the pain and stress and the things that they're experiencing. And more than that, they remind all of us that when we're not feeling those things, that we're supposed to be present for the ones who are. And in doing so, we share that hurt together. We don't offer quick fixes. We don't wish the pain away. We don't say that we need to try harder to feel better. We sit together. We share those hurts. And in suffering together, it spreads the pain out so that no one person is carrying all of the pain in our community at any time. We're all sharing a little bit of it. And we all help each other out when we do that. We could see that kind of thing worked out when Jesus helped that demon-possessed man, when God ministered to Elijah, and when the psalmist cried out, just looking for someone to hear them. So if you want to see more content like this, check out the links to my right, or click the logo just below my face to subscribe so you'll know when my next video comes out. Thank you for watching, and take the time this week to love your neighbor as yourself, especially if you don't like them all that much.